Hello and welcome to Bauer Beauty. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm a licensed esthetician. On this channel, I talk about a variety of interesting topics. I talk about beauty related content. If you're interested in that, please subscribe now. If you are interested in limited ingredient, cruelty-free, anti-aging skincare that is designed for more sensitive skin types, then please check out my website where you will find all of my skincare. Today I am testing out a primer that has gone viral on TikTok and social media, and it's Drugstore. It is the Wet n Wild Impossible Primer. I have heard amazing things about it. This is the Wet n Wild Impossible Primer. And I have a Wet n Wild foundation here that I will be testing as well on top of this. Now I have tried this before over a different primer and I really enjoyed it. It is $5.95, so that is pretty impressive. I love drugstore products. I love finding a deal. I always have my eye open for amazing, affordable drugstore priced products. Do you know when you get new products and then when you go out, you don't necessarily want to experiment with products that you recently purchased because you don't know how they're going to perform and you don't want to have a messed up foundation or primer for the entire night, so you wind up just using the same things that you always use. That's how I have felt. It's like every time I go out, I'm like, well, I don't want to experiment because I don't know how this is going to perform and what if it's not great. And so now it's a Sunday and I am not actually going anywhere, and so I thought this would be the perfect time to experiment with new skin products. Okay, so we're going to apply the primer. It is an interesting looking base, so it's a little bit more solid than your typical silicone, but it still is translucent. It looks like it's mainly water, glycerin, and so it's really going to hydrate and plump the skin. And by virtue of hydrating and plumping the skin, it's also going to hold foundation on better and also blur the skin a bit. So that's what I would predict is going to happen, but we will see. Now, as I spread this out, it actually feels like more buoyant, more watery than your typical silicone-based primer, which would make sense because this actually doesn't have silicone. It is a very interesting texture. It feels kind of like a cleansing oil almost. It's like that thicker kind of sorbet feeling that kind of melts down. So I'm just gonna apply this over my entire face. Depending on the type of primer that you use, sometimes you want to just put primer in the areas where you have texture, and some primers you want to apply to your entire face. It does have fragrance. I think this primer is better suited to the full face because it's not like a dramatic texture blurring product. Since it's a more of a watery feeling, you apply it to the full face and it's going to help prolong foundation and plump up the appearance of your skin. I'm going to use the Wet n Wild foundation on one half, and I'm going to use another drugstore foundation on the other half just so we can compare and see how the primer performs under two different foundations. I really want to try out this Wet n Wild, obviously, because they're from the same brand, and then I'm going to try on the other half of my face this Lumi, and hopefully I don't look crazy because they are slightly different in color. I think the Wet n Wild is going to be a little bit too light for me. That's what I predict. Okay, so the Wet n Wild foundation, which I will put on first, has a very interesting applicator. It's a paddle. This primer is tingling my skin, but my face has been just more tingly in general. I'm going to apply the Wet n Wild foundation to the right side of my face, and it is way too light, obviously. So what I like about this instantly is you see how it's watery, how it's translucent. I want that and I like that because a thinner formula usually means better results for me and my skin type. When you get thinner formulas, usually for whatever reason, they just look more natural on the skin and they help to minimize texture and just look like your natural skin more so than if a foundation is thicker. It can look a little less natural on the skin. Okay, so as I bounce this out, it really blends into like a very natural, translucent finish. I thought it would be like a little bit more full coverage, but it's not, and I'm happy about that. It is very natural looking. So far, I'm pretty impressed because I just can't get over the fact that it's $6. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Very natural finish. It kind of just camouflaged my redness or some pigment and gave my skin a nice luminosity, but it's even though it was so light, it really didn't make my complexion too offensively bright, which it could have. If it was pigmented, it was light enough to make my face look awkwardly white and look chalky, but this looks really nice and clean and I'm very happy with it. So now I'm going to try the Lumi, which is a OG skin tint, okay? It is like an OG skin tint. It is called the foundation, but I've always more so felt like it was a skin tint. It's a light to medium coverage and it's quite watery and it's obviously luminous because that's the name of it. So I'll just spot it all over my face. This has more of a foundation consistency than the Wet n Wild did. The Wet n Wild was more watery. Okay, so as I bounce it out, so this definitely has more. Oh my God, it's fucking gorgeous. Holy crap. Excuse my language. It is actually very gorgeous. I think the color might be a little off. I can't tell. First impression, holy moly. That is stunning. This has slightly more coverage and I actually am liking it. Maybe like 10% more coverage than the Wet n Wild did. But as you can see, it's still like your skin, but better. It still looks natural. It still feels natural on the skin and it still looks natural because of the fact that it's not totally full coverage or thick. Still a thinner consistency, and that again looks very nice on the skin. It looks more natural. It's more comfortable to wear. It's not gonna feel heavy or get oily or greasy throughout the day. And it offers just a little bit more coverage and it looks airbrushed. It looks freaking airbrushed. Okay guys, so I have applied the rest of my makeup because of the fact that my camera was dying anyways, so I had to change the battery. But this is the final look and the makeup looks like it applied really, really nicely. Overall, on both sides of my face, I see a consistent luminosity. I see a consistent plumping. So I am assuming this is coming from the primer. So I do see that the foundations performed slightly differently, but I can tell the primer underneath is really consistent in the way that it plumped, the way that it's making my skin look a little bit more plumper and more glowy and more radiant. So I really, really like that. And I like this primer so far. For the money, 100%. It looks kind of flawless on the skin. I applied cream blush, translucent setting powder, and highlighter. I will link these products that I used in the description as well. And I also just filmed a video on applying the Rare Beauty Cream Blush. If you want to know how to do that, that will be at a future video. So I hope this video is useful to you. If so, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, loves.